Okay, so I'm going to be doing the Batman Arkham Knight with the Steam Deck. We're going to be starting off with 800p on the lowest settings. Alright, let's jump into it. Okay, now starting off with 800p low settings. We're getting around 70 FPS while looking over the city, which is kind of crazy to be honest. But as you can see, as soon as we start gliding down, we're going to be seeing a decent FPS drop down into the 50s, which is still pretty great. I already knew 60 FPS wasn't going to be possible with this game. This game looks fantastic, it looks great on the Steam Deck, but it's still very intensive. So ideally I'm going to be going for a 40 FPS lock, or if that's too hard to do, I'm going to go for a 30 FPS lock, which is 100% doable. And then I'm going to be doing the optimized settings at the end of the video as well, so we can find the best looking game with decent performance as well. But as you can see, we're sitting in the mid 40s right now, just fighting around. Still pretty good. We're getting a bunch of stutters here and there obviously because our FPS is unlocked. You want to definitely cap your FPS in this game to have the most stable and consistent frame rate. Driving around, I saw the most FPS drops while playing, dropping down into the 30s. If you play at those higher settings, you'll drop down into the low 30s. But on low settings, we are sitting around the low to mid 40s with occasional dips into the high 30s. So you can play this game with a 40 FPS lock, but you will get some occasional stutters and dips into the 30s. So if you're cool with that, it's definitely doable. But if you want the most stable frame rate, then I would go with a 30 FPS lock, which is fine because the PS4 and Xbox One version of this game is running at 30 FPS with occasional dips into the 20s. So we're still matching the console version of this game, which is still great, but I still understand that people want to get the most frame rates out of the Steam Deck as possible, so it kind of makes sense if you don't want to go with a 30 FPS route. If you go indoors, or if you're on foot, you usually get around 40 to 60 FPS, with spikes into the 70s, but the driving through the dense parts of the cities will drop us down into the 30s and 40s, so pretty unfortunate, but it is what it is. Let's go ahead and cap the FPS to 40 and see if we get any stutters. Alright, now with the 40 FPS cap, the game is smooth for the most part, but again, like I said before, you will drive around into these areas where the game will start stuttering, and it will feel a bit sluggish, which is kind of unfortunate. Like right here, the game is feeling quite poor. Personally, I would avoid using this at those settings. I would go ahead and increase the graphical settings a little bit to medium or even high, and go with a 30 FPS cap so the game looks better and runs more consistently as well. But this is an option, so I'm just showing it to you guys. And I want to go ahead and show a bit of performance on foot. As you can see, we're sitting in the mid 40s up to the low 70s. So it's a wide range, but for the most part, you can hold about 50 to 60 FPS quite easily. Okay, now playing the game at medium settings, we do have anti-aliasing enabled right now, which is a different look to the game. I personally like the game without anti-aliasing. It looks more sharper and the rain effects look better as well. I'll probably go ahead and show a clip of that on the screen as well. And the FPS is sitting around 50 to 60 FPS on foot, and while driving we're still sitting around the 40s with dips into the 30s. Our performance is very similar to what we had at low settings, but obviously slightly worse. Our FPS dips are a bit more aggressive, sitting down into the low to mid 30s now while driving, where that wasn't the case on low settings. We were sitting in the mid to high 30s as a worst case scenario. But still, we can't get away with playing with a 30 FPS cap here because we haven't dropped down below 30 yet. But even at 30, from what I've seen, you will get some stutters occasionally though, so just keep that in mind. Okay, now playing the game with a 30 FPS cap, you can see that the frame graph is doing a lot better, way smoother. Not getting any stutters or any lag spikes, but like I said before, it will occasionally happen in some areas. It's not going to be as aggressive as an uncapped frame rate or a 40 FPS cap, but it still does happen occasionally. You'll obviously be losing a bit of responsiveness to the game while playing at 30 FPS instead of playing at 40 or even 50, but you're just avoiding those stutters and those FPS drops that you'd be experiencing normally with a 40 FPS or 50 FPS cap. Alright, now playing the game with the high settings, which is the max preset for this game. We're sitting around 40 to 60 FPS on foot, which is about the same as what we had on low settings, obviously a bit lower. But where we're going to see the most decrease in performance is while driving. I had as low as 25 FPS while driving, which is quite unplayable. Can lower the resolution as well and use FSR to gain some FPS back. I think the sweet spot for this game is the medium settings, or a mix of medium to high. So that's what I'm going to be going with my optimized settings. But we'll get to that in a second. Alright, driving around, we're sitting in the mid 30s pretty much on average, with dips into the low 30s and some aggressive dips into the high to mid 20s. So it is quite unplayable at this point. It is stuttering like crazy, getting a lot of FPS dips, and all this for a bit of extra quality. The game does look a bit better than medium settings, but it's not a massive jump, you know, so for how much we're losing, it's not really worth playing at this preset for. Alright, I'm playing the game at the optimized preset. Gonna be using 800p to start it off with, but I will try out FSR later on as well. But driving around, we're getting 40 to 50 FPS on average, with dips into the mid to high 30s. So it's a mix of medium to low settings in terms of performance, but our quality preset is a mix of medium to high with shadows turned to low. Now I'm playing the game with an uncapped frame rate right now, which is causing us to have a lot of stutters and lag spikes. You want to definitely cap your FPS to 30, that's what I would go with, but 40 FPS again is doable, but you'll just get more stutters. Now with the 40 FPS cap, you can see that we're dropping down into the mid 30s on average. While on foot, you can hold 40 quite easily. Driving around, you will get those dips into the mid 30s, which will cause you some stutters as well. The game does feel more responsive like this, but the stuttering is a bit annoying, so I would just stick to 30. Alright, now with the 30 FPS cap, the game is running beautifully, not getting any stutters or any lag spikes, or it's not as often as what it was at 40 FPS obviously. You will still get some occasional ones that will sneak in at 30 FPS, but for the most part, it's a pretty good 30 FPS lock, and it's definitely far more enjoyable than having your FPS uncapped or playing at 40 or 50 FPS. And for portable play, I'm playing the game at 960 or 600 with FSR enabled, and still using the optimized settings with a 30 FPS cap, and we're pulling around 12 to 14 watts of power, which is around 3 hours to 3.5 hours of battery life, which is pretty great. The game still does look quite good as well, maybe a bit over sharpened. You can disable the film grain in the settings as well, which will help with it a little bit. And I'm playing the game at 40 FPS. The game's running quite better as well compared to 800p. I'm not getting as many stutters or as many lag spikes. We still do get those dips into the 30s occasionally, but it's nowhere near as bad as what it was before. I'm gonna go ahead and drive in a second so we can see the FPS drops there. And now driving around, still able to hold 40 in this area. There we go, we just had some dips into the mid 30s. So it's not a perfect 40, but it's a lot better than playing at 800p. And instead of pulling 14 watts, we're pulling around 18 to 19 watts of power, which will give us around 2 hours to 2.5 hours of battery life as well. Alright, that's it for the video, guys. If you made it this far, appreciate you. As always, if you like what you see, then a like and subscribe to the channel as well. See you next time.